Hi, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Devon Malcolm Booster, Managing Director here at HyperAcademics Jamaica Limited. And once again, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to day 2 of MedSkool KickOff. I know that it is pretty early in the day, and we expect the numbers to be a little small from the beginning, but we expect others to join as we proceed. So it is my pleasure to be here, and we will proceed as planned. So, as I said, want to welcome all of you to today's session. Those who are joining, I want to invite you to just put a comment in the chat, in the YouTube chat, of what country you're coming from. So we want to know what country you're coming from. So please just make a quick comment in the YouTube chat. What country are you coming from? Either country or campus that you're coming from. Okay. Seems like those we have on board. Wonderful. We have Chavanese Shirley from Jamaica. Welcome, Chavanese. We have Mark Himmans again from Jamaica. We have Chip Ends, Jamaica. We have Annika Samuel Cave Hill. We have Sean Trinidad, wonderful. We have Shania 868 Trinidad again. We have Natoya from Jamaica. We have Daniel coming in from Jamaica. We have Rochelle from Trinidad. Welcome, welcome. I love to see it. Gail from Trinidad. Tyrese, Trinidad. We have Xavier Brown, who's making us think that he's coming from Barbados, but we all know that Xavier is situated right here in Kingston. Welcome, welcome, all of you. As you know, I mean, we decided that we're going to start smack on time, but we know sometimes some people need a little more time to come on, so we're going to give them that time. But while we're going to do that, we're not just going to sit down and just watch each other. We're actually going to be engaged. So I have some weird questions to ask you, and let us see how comfortable you are to answer those questions. So the first question is, today's Sunday. Caribbean culture is Sunday. We usually have some nice food, usually for lunch. So what I want you to do is to put in the chat what you had for either breakfast or lunch. I'm going to give you the choice. If you want to say what you had for lunch and breakfast, wonderful. We will not refuse sharing in your culinary delight, but we want to know what you eat wherever you come from. And what you could maybe do is also say what country you're coming from. So we can say, okay, this person from Jamaica is having ackee and saltfish. Wonderful. So let's see. What have you eaten? Okay. So Hollis Thompson say that they had roti for lunch. So I'm going to assume that Hollis is from Trinidad. Am I correct, Hollis? I mean, you could have roti anywhere, but that's my best guess. We have some people who had no lunch as yet. This person had macaroni and cheese. I love to see it. Annika Samuel, where's Annika from? She did indicate earlier on where Annika is from Barbados. So Barbados is having macaroni and cheese for lunch today. Mark Hemans had roti. I think Mark Hemans is from Trinidad. Hollis is saying that, yes, I am from Trinidad, so I got it right. Mark Davis had an egg sandwich for breakfast. Wonderful. I hope you had some nice vegetables, lettuce, tomato in there, although I don't like tomatoes. Kale had roti, and I'm so sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly. It might be Keel, but okay. Martin had roti. Keel, are you from Trinidad? It seems as if the entire Trinidad is having roti for lunch today. So let us know if you're from Trinidad. And while you are at it, just shoot a message to your friends and tell them, come on, tell them, ask them where they are, tell them they're missing all the fun. So Annika did confirm that she's from Trinidad. Mark said that he doesn't like tomatoes, so his egg sandwich definitely did not have tomatoes. That's okay. I don't like tomatoes either. So Jasmine is in Trinidad, and Jasmine had callaloo, peas, macaroni pie, and veggies. So Jasmine had a nice big full meal, and she also is suggesting to us that all of Trinidad doesn't eat roti for lunch or breakfast. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. And someone is saying that they just woke up and they had nothing. They had nothing for breakfast. So that means or lunch. That means they're having HyperAcademics for lunch. They're having MedSkool KickOff for breakfast, and I just love to see it. I love to see it. We have Tyree St. Louis, who had macaroni pie, potato salad, stewed chicken, and fish, and Mobby. I love to see it. And Tyrese is affirming that Tyrese is from Trinidad and Tobago. So we have a lot of culinary variety right there with us today. Let's see. Someone else again from Trinidad is saying that they had callaloo, macaroni pie, potato salad, stew pork, boiled sweet potato, and plantain. This food, I must confess, I haven't eaten as yet, and this is making me feel very hungry. This is making me feel very hungry. So wonderful. Thank you very much. Rashawn is saying that that he had provisions, dumpling, curry chicken, and veggies. And Rashawn is coming from Trinidad. Awesome stuff, everybody. So I'm happy that most of us are well fed, and we had some nice good up food to eat for our lunch. And so that means we must be energized and ready for what HyperAcademics Jamaica Limited and our partners have in store for us today. So what we're going to do today is we have two aspects to our program for today. Xavier is asking if Jamaicans never ate, and Candice is saying it clearly looks like the Jamaicans have not eaten for the day. It seems as if Trinidad, all the food just nyam in Trinidad only, and one or two from Kville. Daniel Jackson is saying that they had chicken sandwich, and they're making sure that Xavier knows that they had chicken sandwich. Wonderful. I'm happy that we are all here. So what we're gonna do today is we have we're going to have a discussion with two of our partners, representative from our partners. We're going to have a first discussion on a social life. My apologies, having a senior moment. A social life. How? So a social life in medical dental school, how we actually do that. And we have a medical student and a dental student who I will introduce in a short while. And then we have the man himself, Xavier Brown, one of the directors here at HyperAcademics Jamaica Limited, and one of our senior student tutors. He's a fourth-year medical student, and he's going to take us through the academic aspect of our production this afternoon. As we explained yesterday, part of MedSkool KickOff is we're going to have academic sessions, not meant to scare you. You don't have to do any prior research. You don't have to, if you want to take notes, you can, but it's just a matter of introducing you to just small nuggets of what actually to expect here when you start off your medical or dental school journey. So that is basically the outline of what we're gonna do today. And so today we may go under the 2 hours, which I'm sure nobody would mind at all. So without further ado, we're going to kick off the kickoff with a social life in medical slash dental school. How? Okay, so we have two amazing speakers this afternoon. It's going to be a discussion based session, and I'm going to introduce them one by one. So, firstly, I'm going to introduce. I'm going to go with the youngest of the two. I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure how who is older by age, but I know that one is in an earlier year than the other. So we're gonna go with the younger ones. I'm sure the older one wouldn't mind that. We are a little kind to the younger one. So you saw her yesterday. She is Michaela Richardson, the president of the the MBBS Urimona MBBS class of 2025. She's also a national officer, I think, on JAMSA. Which of them was it again?
Scorp.
SCORP, right. So she's a SCORP national officer. Um, and then, so yeah, anything you want to say to us in the as we introduce?
That's it, I guess. I can just get into the whole social life aspect of it.
Well, actually, just before you do that, let me just introduce our the second speaker as well. So our second speaker this afternoon, again, you met her yesterday. She is Candice Ambersley. She's the Vice President of External Affairs for the Jamaica Dental Student Association. She's also in year 3 of her studies. And Michaela is year 4, right? She's in year 4 of her studies. Michaela is entering her second year of studies, and I am actually just excited to have them. But before we actually delve into the core of our discussion, there's two things I want to highlight. That really and truly it kind of underscores why Candice and Michaela are a match made in heaven for this session. I just see how proud and excited they look. So, two things. One, as we said, MedSkool KickOff is for both medical and dental students. Dental students are in a smaller cohort, but they are equally as significant. And so the first thing is that we have a dental student and a medical student to give us their perspectives on this very important topic. But in addition to that, one of the things that is very interesting and very important to note is that Candice, she's in 4th year. It means that Candice started her dental school journey while in normal times before the pandemic. So she has the experience of having to balance her social life in a normal setting, and then she also is acquainted with the pandemic side of things. But my good friend Nikki, oh my God, I just said good friend and then I mixed up your name. So like there's a lie somewhere. But my good friend Michaela, she is entering her second year of medical school. That means that Michaela doesn't know anything about medical school before the pandemic. So her only perspective is from a in pandemic situation. And as you could very well imagine, it means therefore that they will have slightly different perspectives because they're coming from different vantage points. And I think that is important for us to understand because, yes, we are in the pandemic now, but we don't expect the pandemic to last forever. And so, yes, you need to know how, yeah, keep your fingers crossed. Yes, you need to know how to balance your social life in the pandemic, but we need Candice to tell us exactly how to do it when the pandemic is over. So, with that said, and with no further ado, I'm going to invite Michaela Richardson to first give us her perspective on the topic, a social life in medical dental school. How? Take us through it, sister.
Hi, guys. So, as Devon introduced me, I started medical school in this here pandemic, and you guys will also be starting in this here pandemic. So I would say personally, it's not as hard to balance a social life being online, just in terms of the balancing aspect, because it's a bit more flexible. You can go and you can, if you accidentally miss a class, you can go and you can watch the recording while you can use the other time to socialize if you please, right? A big downside of that though is you forget to study because you're like, "Oh, I have the time. I can just watch all the lectures later. I can do all this another time." But really, you cannot. You can't force everything later to say, okay, I'm going to socialize right now and force all your actual studying and school stuff later. It does not work. Another downside that is unique to starting online is that unless you knew someone before, yes, remember to study, guys. Unless you knew someone before, you're going into this with basically no friends, right? And it's kind of difficult to make those new connections online. It's really difficult to read tones online. Like someone can say something and they would mean it one way, but you're reading it in a completely different tone. It makes it so difficult. I'm not gonna lie. And just forming friendships out of what 200 plus people who you only know strictly online, it's a bit difficult. A big thing for me were study groups. You come together and you may not be friends with everybody from the study group, but you now have a smaller group to choose from instead of the overwhelming big class. So online, it really is, it's difficult, but you guys will be able to find the balance. And it's a game of prioritizing. I'm sure that Candice will touch on this later as well. Nobody should tell you that you can't have a social life in med school, in dental school. You can. It just depends on what you prioritize. And your social life should definitely be one of them. I'm not saying be like me and don't study, but a social life is super, super important. Where else are you going to find your support group, your support system to help you through this long, difficult journey? So it's all about prioritizing for me. And that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you so much, Michaela, for that. I just want to touch on some things that you mentioned. The first thing is you mentioned about tones, right? I mean, that is a thing that predated the pandemic. Even before pandemic, people been talking on WhatsApp and in groups, and so people have been having those kind of challenges. But I mean, I feel like it's pre-pandemic. I mean, let's say if someone misunderstood your tone, I mean, you probably see them the next day at school. You can clarify,
For
and then maybe
sure.
they were your friends before. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe call them. But do you think it has been it might be more difficult when it is you're working within the pandemic, you're talking with people that you've probably never seen ever in your life, and you tell someone something. And I mean, as class president, sometimes we have to say things to our students that they don't really like. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily very popular, and things. So do you think it makes it a little difficult to reconcile when it is anyone misunderstands your tone? And if so, how have you approached? Because I'm sure you had this situation, which is why you can you can talk about it like that. How have you been able to overcome that?
Okay, so it's definitely, in my opinion at least, it's definitely more difficult to read tones when you're solely online because you have no other basis or no other idea of the person except your personal experiences that have basically nothing to do with them. So when you're face to face, even if you go online, you have some idea of the person. You're like, oh, this person, they're just matter of fact, for example. They type with full stops. This is just how they speak. It's not that they're trying to be rude or offend anyone. But when you're solely online, no other basis, and you see how someone types, maybe in your experience, people who type like that are a certain way, and you make some assumptions, and it honestly can be super destructive and detrimental. So how I, especially as a class president, how I have learned to overcome that is, if someone says something to you, because maybe how you said something, you didn't think anything of it. If someone says something to you, or someone expresses, oh, what exactly did you mean by this? Or don't be afraid to explain yourself, right? And don't take it to heart, because they're just asking for clarification. And that's the best thing that you can do as the recipient. If someone says something to you and you're like, don't be afraid to ask for clarification. Don't be afraid to give clarification, because that's really the only way that we have to communicate in this pandemic. Communication is key, clarification is king. So that's my advice on the matter.
Thank you very much. I really and truly couldn't agree more. But I want to bring in Candice to find out from Candice if it is that she has noticed that pre-pandemic encountering those challenges, if it is that it has been, if it is now more difficult, or if it is you find it that you encounter these challenges of misunderstanding tones more frequently since you're interacting with other persons online much more frequent than before. What do you think, Candice?
I personally agree with the whole tone issue. It's not just pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, in the pandemic. It's a general thing. So I agree that regardless of if you knew the person from before, or if you guys have met once in real life and you kind of see the vibe they give off, even over the phone, based on the conversation, it kind of, the tone can kind of play a difference in, oh, she disrespect me, or oh, I understand what she mean. You understand me? So I get that whole tone issue, and I believe that it's going to be a forever issue, regardless of wherever we are in this pandemic phase.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, as someone as well, I mean, I'm the most senior among the three of us, so I've been at it a little longer. And then, like Michaela, I am also a class president for a president for my class. So trust me, I encounter this every single day, pre-pandemic or in pandemic. And I know I will encounter it post-pandemic. But what you say is actually true. It's not so much about seeking to avoid it, because it's inevitable, but it's more important how you choose to deal with it, and how you choose to clarify, and how you react when it is someone who misinterpreted your tone. They might react aggressively. It calls on you to first identify that it might be that you came off wrong to them. So before you get upset, you kind of try to clear up the air first, and then you decide whether you whether you need to get upset or not. So thank you very much for that. But Michaela, further, the other thing I wanted to bring up from your little preamble is study groups. Right now, I mean, we usually told when we start a medical and dental school, study groups is important. Candice mentioned yesterday that Dr. Jones drill it in their heads that no man is an island, and I couldn't agree more. But I mean, usually, at least from my experience, and Candice can tell us if that was her experience as well. I mean, when you come into medical and dental school, if let's say you're coming from high school or whatever, you tend to have your cliques, your cliques from high school and stuff. They join with you. And then your bonds grow as you continue to struggle, because we all know med school and dental school is struggle life. So you struggle together, you go, and you kind of naturally form your study groups and so forth. And you meet new people from time to time, and they enter your little cliques and that kind of stuff. So it kind of makes sense, and seems to be quite easy for the most part pre-pandemic, seeing face to face. But now you are on this online platform, Michaela. You have not met most of these people. So tell us how has it been in terms of forming these study groups, which, I mean, they're not just study groups. Your study groups tend to become your social circles as well. you stay up all night at the library, pre-pandemic, sorry. And then on the Friday night, you go to Ribis together, you go to XYZ. So yeah, tell us, how was it?
Um, 2025, what we did is there were some, I think a few already formed study groups. So they obviously they maintained themselves. They formed just organically. Everyone else, it was more of who needs to be in a study group, and they would just be filled in. So if we had 10
Right.
study groups, if two were already filled and you said, I need a study group, you'd be number three. When that's finished, that's corded off, number four. Because we had like a limit, because you can't have a study group with 10, 15 people. So we did it as like a whole class effort. And I just want to mention, since we're online, and as I said, study groups are super important, don't feel bad if the first study group that you make doesn't necessarily work out or work for you, right? Of course, you can still be friends with them, but I'm sure that you have friends who you can't necessarily study with or study long term with. Don't feel bad about that. We really don't know each other. And by joining your first study group, it's really a shot in the dark because you don't know these people. Of course, always be respectful. If you have to leave the study group, you say why. You can still be friends, but the study group's main thing, at least right now, especially that we're online, is for studying. Don't feel bad if you realize, we don't really mesh that well as a group. Ask if you can join another group. You don't know. The opportunities are basically endless with 200 people in the class. You have a lot of options of people or study styles to try out and see, hey, this study group does Anki. I love Anki. Let's do Anki together. So when you're joining them, they may not be organic at first, and you may stick with your first study group and you say, this is my group, these are my people. And sometimes it may not work like that, but don't feel bad. It's all for the course. It's all for the course.
As I said, I again, I really and truly could not agree more. One of the things I would highlight is that the class of 2025, the executive, I think it was very brilliant that they acknowledged the context in which they're working, and they kind of initiated that conversation in terms of, okay guys, you need to start study groups, but we're not just telling you should start study groups. They actually organized and help their students to actually form it. So as Michaela mentioned, like someone say, oh, I'm not in a study group, and they look and see, okay, which one has space. She also touched on a very important point that you really and truly should try to not have a too big a study group, because it can become a little cumbersome when you're trying to work out these things. And also from a social angle as well, I mean, more people kind of technically means more drama. Yeah, it kind of means more drama. So that is more people who have to agree on a time to study, more people who have to agree on a topic to study. It's a lot. So I think there is great wisdom in keeping the circle small and constant. And the last thing I would mention is just re-echoing that point that you made about moving circles if you have to. Yes, we have to help each other and everything, but foremost on your mind has to also be what works for me. And you don't want to keep yourself in a state of stagnation, and you're not progressing, you're not meeting your goals if it is that the group is just not necessarily helping you in that way based on their approach. So thank you so much, Michaela, for that perspective. And I want to just go on to Candice to really and truly tell us her perspective, her take on the topic of social life in medical and dental school. How?
All right. So pre-pandemic, having a social life, as Michaela said, was all about prioritization. So you go to school every day, 5 days a week, from morning to evening, and sometimes even afterwards you have to study, have this, that quiz, exam. So prioritization is where you have to find the time for yourself. The weekends, I would say, are most definitely an option because, all right, you're going to dedicate these 5 days to school, right? And then on the weekend, you blast, you go out, you go to your friend, you have all the fun you need. But if you're not a person who can enjoy their weekends just like that, you have to find that balance between, all right, I've gone to school for this amount of hours. In the evening, where can I find time for myself? Right? So you come home, a bit of TV, or you go get food with your friends, and then maybe you come home and you sleep, and then you wake up and get some study done for the next day. So you have to find what best works for you, and that's the main aim in trying to have a social life. As Michaela said again, nobody must tell you, say, you as a dental or medical student cannot have a social life because nobody never write that in a stone, right? You have to literally to say that you have 5 years in school. Yes, you want to be the brightest. Yes, you want to still have a social life, but you still have to find that balance. Don't be one of those persons all school, all school, all school, and when you're finished, it's just like I don't have any friends. I don't know this place. I don't know where people go to hang out. How do I do this and do that? Or be that person who's like, oh, party, going out, eat food, everything. And then you end up having 7 years in medical school you never account for, paying you in way much more money than you needed to. And then at the end of the day, you're doing your doctor job and you're just like, I don't remember this class. What happened here? So again, it's all about finding the balance between books, party, going out, friends, especially friends. When I went into dental school, I was the only person out of my friend group who went to medical school. Yes. So when I am here, every lunchtime, every weekend, trying to go out with my friends, and then they're there passing their exam same way and getting hundreds, and I'm just like getting 70s, 60s just because I never find my balance in trying to study for my course and my program and not their program. So you have to also take that into consideration that yes, you have your friends that you're coming from high school or friends that you have from before, but you are a different person than they are. So you have to find how you yourself personally can sort out yourself, because at the end of the day, you are the person becoming that doctor, you're the person becoming that dentist. They aren't. They don't know the struggle we go through as medical students. So they don't know that, oh, this weekend I can't go. Oh, when I come home from school, just go through a whole day of school. How you study already? What you mean? Like, these things need to get done. So also finding that balance between you and your friends is very important.
Thank you so much for that, Candice. I think the main takeaway from what you just mentioned for me, and I think for many others, I'm seeing the chat is lighting up with people just saying how they're so much in agreement. The goal is balance. That is the key. The key is balance because as you said, I mean, yes, you're here to read for your degree and pursue your degree, but you're also human. And I think it was Jada who said in the comments, your mental health above everything else.
Most
And some
definitely.
of us we only learn that when we are heading towards the end, because towards the end is when the pressure kind of turn up.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't recognize that we should be prioritizing our mental health from the get go. But I want to find out from Michaela now. Michaela, you have been doing this thing online, right? But in the thing about it is that in addition, you have the situation where, I mean, with the pandemic, curfews and lockdown, you may not necessarily have had the opportunity, like Candice and myself, to go out as frequently as we probably did in our first year and that kind of stuff. So theoretically, your grade's supposed to be better than us. Because your grade's supposed to be better than us. It's supposed to be more focused because you don't have all this distraction. Tell us if our expectations is false, our expectations is ludicrous. or we hit the nail on the head? Tell us now.
Well, um, you see, the thing about that is I'm still maybe my class in general, my classmates, they're starring up the place. But being a member on the exec, especially me having to be active on the class exec, it
Mm.
also takes up a bit of my time. And I wouldn't make any claims like that. I wouldn't make any
So
assumptions like that.
let the record show that Michaela has used her presidency as an excuse for not getting those A pluses we expect from her.
A plus.
But I mean, the truth of the matter is that I mean, remember we are all social beings. That means no matter where you put us, we go through, we're gonna find a way to meet those social needs. So, Andrew Holness, take away your parties, and take away your restaurant, and take away your bars. But
Go
there's Zoom,
outside.
there's Netflix. There's still, I mean, okay, well, at some point the beach was kind of closed, but I mean, at some point it opened back. So essentially, you find other ways to socialize, and so perhaps the expectation that automatically it would mean that you the dean's list don't even have a place for you because your grades just far above the dean's list. It means that the expectation that that is the case is kind of unreasonable. But it also guys, it underscores the need to find some creative way to meet your social needs, because regardless of what the environment is, pre-pandemic, in pandemic, post-pandemic, your social needs are important. And so if it is you cannot do it one way, find some other way, right? If it is you have to spend some more time with your sisters, your brothers, your mother, engaging in conversations that ordinarily you probably would not want to, because you prefer to chill with your friends outer road. No, now is the time for you and your mother and you and your father to bond, right? Get that so you meet the social needs anyway, morally sound and legally sound. Soundly possible. Okay, that statement kind of made no sense. But what I'm trying to say is find some way to meet your needs. Once it is morally sound and legal, find a way. But going back to the point that Candice keeps stressing and Michaela keeps stressing. The word is balance. Everybody say it with me. One, two, three. Balance.
Balance.
The group chat in the comment section. I want to see people type balance. Let's balance. And while you're doing that, let us just show up this wonderful comment by Jada. She said, "This will show who your true friends are. The ones who understand your life as a medical dental student are the ones who truly care." And again, Jada is what just spitting facts, spitting facts. I must say, because you see, with when the rigors of medical and dental school, it naturally is going to push you away slightly from the people who are not in medical and dental school, the people who don't have the same sort of challenges. It's going to push you a little away from them because you need to be more in the space to study. You need to spend more time in the library pre-pandemic. Spend some more time in the library and so forth. So you're going to be spending more time with the people you study with and so forth, and less time with the other people. But I've learned that the people who are my true friends, who are not medical or dental students, they understand. And so they are not as offended when they don't hear from me. They're not as, and I have friends, that no matter how long we stay with and we have not spoken, not because we're upset with each other, but whenever we meet again, we just head straight back to square one, straight back to where we left off. So find those kind of friends. And yes, I love to see it in the group chat. The theme, the anthem, the national anthem is balance. On the Olympic podium, first, second, and third, one, two, three is what? Say it with me. Balance.
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 Okay, so we spent a wonderful time discussing this topic. I am sure persons uh, would benefited from this discussion. But I want to open up the floor, the virtual floor, in the comment section for persons who might have any questions to ask these questions, especially given our the discussion that we had. Ask it, send a question in the comment section, and we definitely will try to answer it as best as possible. Someone is saying that those are the best non-med friendships. I think they're referring to the friends who are not in med but understand that you are in med, and so you're not going to be as flexible. These are the best non-med friends, and I couldn't agree more, because it kind of shows that they understand and they value your friendship, and they're confident in your friendship enough to know that, okay, if you don't see them, that you're still loving them from a distance. So I love to see that. um there was a question that somebody asked, and I want to just pull that up. It was a question that we what we did is that we also gave students the opportunity to ask questions before, and two persons took advantage of this opportunity. So one student is asked, or has asked rather, what is, or no, are you able to still go out with friends and random links up as a MBBS student? And I would amend that question to say both as a MBBS and a dental student. And what I would want is for Candice to answer that question from your pre-pandemic perspective, but I want Michaela also to answer from an in-pandemic perspective. If you've been having a random link up with your friends, whether it's virtual or in person, hopefully you're not breaking Andrew's curfew in the process. But yeah, let's say. So Candice, how would you answer that question?
So definitely it is very easy, I would say, to kind of go out with your friends pre-pandemic. Finish school and you just jump in a one car and we just head out same way straight away, or even to just go to a friend's house and when they would just leave from there. So it is still able, you're still able to do so. And if you as a friend group decide that, all right, we have this coming up, but let us take this day to just go and enjoy ourselves before we kill ourselves with studying, then you guys can just easily say, all right, let's take this day, as a group or even as an individual. Some people are afraid to actually go out by themselves. And there's nothing wrong with saying, oh, I myself personally need a mental break from the work, from my friends, from people. You just go and sit and have a meal by yourself and, de stress. So you still are able, even in the pandemic themselves, you still can say, all right, this online class just finished. Let us head out right now before the curfew lock off and them something there. So it's still possible for sure.
Wonderful. And Michaela, yes, let us also see.
um there's no still, because we're starting here. I do believe that a lot of people, including me, when you have a study group comprised of members who so happen to live relatively close to you, like if you're in Jamaica in the same parish, if you're in Trinidad in the same part of Trinidad, you could plan, hey guys, I know we're acquainted. Let's have a little meetup.
Mhm.
And for most people, it works. Random, random. Especially if your friends, because if you live in Kingston and your best friend who you've made live in Mandeville, that's not really that's not really gonna happen. So
There's not a lot of room for this
yeah,
run.
random, not right now.
So would you say
But
that in
link
the
ups.
one?
Oh, you can go.
Oh, I was gonna ask. So then, would you say that in the pandemic era, when it comes to your social life, it requires you to be more stick to it with planning. Like you need to plan better in advance.
For
Especially
sure.
wonderful.
Unless it's a friend from before.
Mhm.
I agree. But then I'm thinking that even with your friends that you have from before, I mean, you still have to contend with curfew, for example. So sometimes you have to plan to do things early, as opposed to just randomly showing up at your friend's
At
house at
6, yeah.
6:30, right? And curfew is at 7, you know. So
Yeah.
I agree. I agree completely. And Ahmad is saying that my social life is gaming with the boys. If that's your social life,
Anything that
oh,
works.
no, I knock you. I don't knock you at all. Okay. This other question, the last question, is what is the story of how you met your friends in med school? What's there for us? And well, a second question in that question: what's there for us, med students, to do for fun? So we'll start with you, Candice.
All right. So when I came into med school, I had a one friend who came with me from the school I was coming from. So I literally had to make friends. I'm a very kind of shy, low key person. So at first it was just like so strange for this big whole ever class for me to be like, oh, I'm Candice, hi, be my friend, you know. So it was eventually there were just some people who I just saw all the time. You know, every group that was there, they were there, and we had to continue conversation. Had to get the number for this, had to get the number for that. So that's basically how I got my friends doing work, and then eventually it kind of transformed to actual real life outside of school friendship. Yeah, so that there's some people who is just like they're coming straight away and have an army of friends, and I'm just like, huh? How do you guys do that?
Right.
But it's just how you make friends, to be honest. There's no set way to make friends in med school. Just at least make them. Because as again, I repeat, you cannot do this journey alone. So even if it's just two friends you guys have, you guys study together, you guys go together, just find them. And please note that the friends who you go out with does not have to be the friends you study with. Yes, because some people have different studying styles. So you might have your best friend in med school, they don't study like you, so you can't study with them. Find other people who you can relate to while studying. You don't need one person to do studying, outing. There are various persons in med school. And what's there for us med school students to do? So from a pre-pandemic kind of view, we you is near like Ligane, Papine, where you have various food places, you have various movie places, outing places. So it was not very hard to just jump in the car and drive there. Um, in the pandemic now, I've seen people do Zoom parties, Zoom watch movie over Zoom. There's a lot of stuff that people are coming up with to do now. So it's just for you to find what you would prefer. There's always an option out there for everybody. So don't think, oh, these people in my class have their friend group that watch movies every Friday. You and your friends that watch movie every Saturday. Just find something to do. We
Right.
don't have the time to be sulky and say, oh, this pandemic mash up my life. This is that. We don't know when the pandemic is ending. Although we want it to end soon, you can't live your life, oh, I'm in a pandemic. Because at the end of the day, when 3 years from now, when the pandemic is finished, what would you have accomplished? Nothing at all.
Yeah, I don't know which one I want to laugh more. The fact that you just made it, you just claimed that the pandemic is gonna last for another 2 years. So I want to cry, but
God forbid. I take it back.
yes. So Michaela, tell us. Answer the question. What is the story of how you met your friends
My
in med school?
friends.
Um, and then also, what's there for us to do as med
For
students slash
fun.
dental students for fun?
So I met my friends. Again, remember that since we're all online, unless it's a study group thing, all of your friends are gonna come from
Yeah, what's up, group?
DMing them, right?
Mm,
And I just want to put a warning out there.
mm,
Please just be mindful about messaging people privately, because again, the tone thing is so huge, and it's one thing if someone misreads your tone in a academic sense, or they think that you're just being a bit snappy or so, but it's really another thing when the tone is misconstrued in a personal and private setting.
Right.
So all of my friends came from, maybe I, like, for a few of them I messaged them, the other set they messaged me outside of like a study group setting. But you have to just be mindful of when you're messaging people, because that's a big thing that can get you in trouble basically. But most of my friends, I think the main reason why one of us messaged the other was that someone sent something in the group chat and you wanted to make a direct, or what's the other word for, yeah, a direct comment on it. Like one of my friends, she had sent a video tour of her room because she was on dorm, and we're like, oh my gosh, because we're excited, we're like, girl, show us some more. Actually she was talking about the room and I messaged her, hey, can I see your dorm? And that's how the friendship started. Another one, we were talking about Teams. Anybody in my class knows that I adore Microsoft Teams, and she was the one who basically introduced me to all the things that it can do. So I'm like, this is my person. Right? So the DM always happened from something that happened in the group chat. So it wasn't just like someone messaged you out to the blue, hey, I want to talk. It was nothing like that. And I feel like if you message people like that, that would come off a bit
Weird.
strange.
Yeah, a bit
So you
weird.
definitely
Very
have to
creepy.
watch yourself, you definitely have to watch yourself when you're messaging people. And in terms of what you can do, okay, people. Okay, people. So the class of 2025, being the first year from the get-go online,
Yeah.
we had some online Zoom parties, okay?
Oh,
Okay? Okay? And it
wonderful.
was a class-wide thing. I'm sure maybe other study groups, when they weren't studying, they had some link-up sessions, but we made it open to the entire class. And of course, not the whole 200 people are going to come,
Right.
but we did have people who weren't necessarily, they didn't actively speak in the group chat, but they were in the Zoom party, and we tried to make it, hey guys, if you're here, we're gonna have a certain activity. Can you turn your cameras on? And it really humanized the experience, because you see, okay, this is Jacob, this is Charlie, and you actually see their face, and you're like, wow, because this is something that you don't get over WhatsApp. You don't get it in classes because nobody not turning on their cameras in class. So it's a way to humanize people, and I totally recommend that you guys try that. Zoom parties, online parties. We also did Instagram lives where it was mainly the class exec that had the cameras on, but it was another way for you guys to actually get to know 2025's exec body, because yes, they would have seen us when they were electing us, but after that is like eyes closed, cameras off.
Right.
So you can do that, and it's not the same as going to a movie together, but it's something that you can do, and you definitely make experiences from them. I will never forget those IG parties, those Zoom parties. It's an experience that you're the only one who can speak to it, for sure, for sure. That
I mean,
uh,
who would have thought that would have gotten to a point where having a Zoom meeting slash Zoom party would be so hype.
so
But I
exciting.
mean, I
Posters
mean,
sent out.
it's, I mean, when that's all you have to make do with what you have. And I
Yeah,
mean, Candice, you can I'm sure you can relate to how different it is, because, like, for example, for us, as part of our orientation into the program, we had acculturation exercises. So I remember one in particular where in the lecture theater, they had us, I think they made us like just draw any random
Yeah.
thing. Right? They made us draw a random thing. They didn't give us any prompt. They just told you, draw whatever comes to mind. And then afterwards, I mean, there was no corona, so we could actually socialize. and then
Mm-hmm.
you walk around the room. So let's say if you draw a lion, you walk around the room and you say lion, 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 and then within 5 minutes you recognize that there are actually other people who drew a lion on their paper. And I do know some people who, as a result of that exercise, all the lion and the lionesses are still friends today because that exercise caused them to come together.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to now, you have to be relying on DMing persons. And the last thing I would want to I would want to mention as we wrap up, to make way for the second aspect of our day two of MedSkool Kickoff, is a point that Michaela mentioned earlier on about the difference between someone sliding into your DMs for academic purposes. You know, hey, has the lecture started? Hey, what was covered? I missed out session, I had internet problems, and that is all well and good, but you have to be extra cautious and intelligent to identify when persons slide into your DMs with ulterior motives. Because now, you know, you're in group chats, everybody have your numbers. And I know I'm speaking because there was an experience with, I think it with with her class in the last academic year where there was a particular person who would slide into females DMs and was basically harassing them, had nothing to do academically. Yeah, creeps like that exist. And basically, it was not until one person spoke up about it, they were brave enough, they had enough, they spoke up about it, and then recognized that so many other people were experiencing the same challenge with that same person. So there's what, one, two, three. I think it's a 5-letter word that I want you to add to the list of words that you must take away. The first one is balance. And the second word that I want you to take away with you, put it in your pocket, and it is block.
Oh,
Yes, block.
Definitely, definitely.
please.
No,
I
no,
didn't see it coming.
know where that block button is, and don't be afraid to use it when these social creeps come into your DMs.
Most
You
definitely.
don't have the time to be dealing with creeps. Is either they're gonna be a friend, either they're gonna be a support to your academic journey, or anything other than that is a no-no. And don't be afraid to block them. Yeah, so balance and block. Very good. Yeah, and Xavier say block and delete. Yeah, but also you remember also too that some of these things might actually be criminal matters, because sometimes people send threats. For example, when they see that you don't really respond positively to their passes and stuff, they might begin threatening you and all that kind of stuff. So another thing you have to be sure to do is to report. If it is, you have to report to whether it is faculty or if it is that serious, you have to report to the police. Do that because yes, we talk about safeguarding our mental health, but you actually have to safeguard the oxygen, as in you need to be alive, safeguard your life. And when it comes to matters of life, you have to take it serious and be unafraid, unashamed to report if necessary. So with that said, I think we've had an extensive discussion. I really had a lot of fun discussing this topic. I really did not
It's 3 o'clock.
how fun it was going to be. That was my laptop. I'm so sorry. My laptop is like, yo, you're chatting too long. But I just want to give you guys the opportunity to make your closing comments on the matter at hand. And then we move on. So we'll start with you, Candice. What are your closing remarks on the topic?
So, other than the two B's we have discussed, which is balance and block, I want you guys to remember also priority. So, I know we have talked about priority with going out and school or with this set of friends and understanding school. I also want you to understand that your main priority is yourself, right? And you have entered into med school because you have felt the need or have the passion to, be a doctor, be a dentist. But you also have to remember that despite everything, you have to prioritize yourself. If today you are not feeling 200 to go to school, I'm not saying you should skip school on purpose, but if you feel like in your heart you need to take a mental health day, as most persons would say, take it. You are your main priority. Med school is not your main priority. Social life is not your main priority. You are your main priority. So you have to do what's best for you. Study at night if that's best for you. Wake up in the morning if that's best for you. Go out if you need to. Just remember that you are your number one priority.
Uh, th- Thank you so much for that. I mean, I feel attacked because I'm 5 years plus into this, and I honestly feel like I have not really hit the nail right on the head. So I am benefiting from this. Michaela, what says you?
Well, hi everyone again. My final words, other than balance, block, and priority, as Candy said, it probably is back on priority. Um, Med school isn't just for learning. Actually, it's just about learning because you're going to be learning so much. You're going to be learning to how to take care of yourself, your mental health. I mean, you may move out. You actually have to take care of yourself. You're going to be learning how to make new friends in a completely different environment, right? It's just so much learning every single day, every single week. There's so much to do. Also, don't limit yourself to just med school. It's really important to have friends who are also not medical or dental students because I know for me, sometimes the content it gets tiring. It gets tiring to always be thinking about the massive amount of credits that we have to do per semester. And even when you go out with friends from med school, sometimes you made you're friends with them because of med school or that's where the relationship started. Sometimes it's really nice to be able to just not talk about it at all, like explaining something to somebody who really is not in the situation. They're like, what are you talking about? And you move on. Whereas if I were to bring it up to Devon or Candy, they'd be like, yeah man, FDT really lit me hard. FDT, but sometimes it ruins the mood. It really ruins the mood. And having non-med friends are sometimes the best way to just,
Relax.
yes, I'm not going to be talking about anything tonight because they don't know what you're talking about. They will respect it, but they must say, what is FDT? What is mole med? I don't know what you're talking about, girl. Let's get a drink,
Yeah.
So it's a lot of learning and don't be afraid. Xavier?
Xavier's coming for
Xavier.
me. What?
Xavier. Anyways, don't be afraid to reach out and do things that aren't necessarily med school related. You may join a club that's not med or dentistry, and you realize, oh, this club can be a part of my social life. You're making new
Mm-hmm.
friends there. You're doing a completely different thing, and it also enriches your medical school journey because you're not just somebody who's in this one thing. Explore everything. You have so many options here, so many social options, so many everything options. The world is basically your oyster. Online makes it difficult, but you can still thrive here. Trust me, guys. Trust me. It may not be the same as in high school. It definitely will not be the same way as in high school, but you can come here, you can thrive, you can have a social life, pass you can pass the courses. I'm not saying any letter grades, but you can pass. Okay, guys? But you can pass, and honestly, you'll enjoy it. Find your support system, balance, block, prioritize, learn, and that's all I have to say about that, guys.
Thank you so much, guys. I mean, I'm sure you can all agree that this discussion has blown in a direction that we never expected it. I think it was a wonderful discussion. I had a lot of fun, and your faces suggest that you had a lot of fun. The comment section suggests that everybody had a lot of fun. And look here, we have the Deputy Dean of Student Success and the MBBS Program Director for the Mona campus chiming in to suggest learn a language. I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Annette Cofford-Sykes, for joining us this afternoon. And I should also mention that the dean for the Mona campus, Dean Minerva Thame, is also or should also be present. She was there yesterday. She said she had fun and she wanted to be back again. So let's just while we're at it, welcome Dean Professor Thame as well as Dr. Annette Cofford-Sykes. Wonderful. So with that said, guys, thank you so much for allowing us to have this wonderful discussion. And we're going to transition into the second aspect of day 2 of MedSkool KickOff. So once again, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us so far. And so in what we're going to do now is that we're going to transition into the academic aspect of our program this afternoon. Remember, we said that over the 4 days of MedSkool KickOff, we are also going to include some introduction to some basic academic concepts, nothing too difficult, nothing that requires you to go and do any significant research or anything, just to give you a little small taste of what is to come. And there is nobody more appropriate to lead us today in the topics that we're going to basically quickly cover. As I said, nothing difficult. If my memory serves me right, it's maybe like 20 slides or something with pictures. So it's nothing long, nothing difficult. So still hang in there. We have Xavier Brown, who is going to lead us through that. And we're going to actually start with cellular injury. So I'm just going to introduce him. I mean, he doesn't really need a lot of introduction because he has a big head. So you can't miss it anywhere. But I mean, yeah. So Xavier Brown is a 4th-year medical student. He is one of the brightest that are around. I'm sure he would be modest and say that he probably isn't. But anybody who knows Xavier knows that he is among the brightest in our faculty. In addition with everybody else, he has excelled academically thus far in his journey through medical school. He is also the cultural and entertainment affairs chairperson for the MBBS DDS class of 2023. So he's known for that as well. Xavier is also, he is a director here at HyperAcademics Jamaica Limited, and he's also a senior tutor. He's known across the campuses. I only learned just the other day how revered he is, for example, by the students in Cave Hill, who really benefited from his neuroscience sessions in the last semester. So I must confess, Xavier really and truly doesn't need any introduction. So yeah, I want to invite Xavier. The only thing I must apologize for is that you're not going to see Xavier's big head today because some technical challenges. He was unable to get his camera working, but that's okay. He's going to take us through by audio. So he's going to take us through that. And what we want you to do is just pay close attention. You can ask your questions same way he's monitoring the YouTube chat. And let's just have some fun while we learn some basics. So we're basically going to start first with some pathology, cellular injury, and then we will take a short break and then go into some pharmacology, basic stuff. And yeah, so whether you're a medical student, a dental student, or a member of faculty, or someone who is just visiting to support Hypr or support anybody else who might be joining the program, there's something in there for you, and you might even learn. You might have been an anti-vaxxer before, and after this session, you're ready for your vaccine. So that was just a lame joke. But let us go right
Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you very much for that introduction, Devon. I think only Devon will truly know how excited I am to be tutoring once again. I've been out for a while, and I'm tired of teaching my clinical friends. So, as you rightly said at the beginning, this is by no means exhaustive. You don't really need to go and jump to your textbooks or your notebooks to be taking any formal notes. What it is that I've done is that I want to introduce some of the basic concepts. And what I've done is included a little twist to see how it is that some of these basic medical content actually applies to the clinical setting, so that you guys can be pretty much as excited as I am. I'm not sure if you can hear how excited I am. So as you rightly said, today we'll be discussing cellular injury and adaptations, and then we'll have a mini talk about inflammation, and then we'll jump right into some pharmacology. So I have a question for you guys. When it is that you hear about homeostasis, what exactly are you thinking in just one word? You can send it in the chat. It was pretty much a word that was emphasized today, one of the B's. No one? Right, excellent, balance, right? So when you think about homeostasis, you're going to be thinking about balance. Now, if it is that we apply this to the human body, what are some of the things that we want to keep in balance? Anyone? Remember, some of you guys coming from Cape or a first degree. So what are some of the things that we like to keep in balance in our body? No one? Right, so blood sugar levels, excellent. Temperature. We also want to keep our electrolyte levels, so our serum sodium, right? Or electrolytes. Excellent. So you understand the entire point of it then, right? So as it states here, homeostasis essentially describes balance. It's a state of steady internal physical and chemical conditions maintained by living systems. So your body pretty much knows the state, and let us call it the steady state that it wants to remain in. So it knows what a normal blood sugar should be like. It knows what your normal electrolyte level should be, so your sodium, potassium, calcium, etc. It knows what your normal blood pH should be like and your temperature. And it's able to maintain this balance through like a feedback system. So, and that feedback system the exceeding of this cell's adaptive capacity. And when it is that you begin medical school and you start pathology, you learn about the different forms of injury, in the forms of reversible or irreversible injury and the different cellular changes that you have. But to bring this back to possibly a Cape level, who remembers Hooke's law? Anybody remembers Hooke's law? guys are much older than you guys, you know, how am I able to remember these things and you guys will remember this? You guys didn't do physics? No? Yeah, you remember Hooke's law. So what do you remember about Hooke's law, Anika? Give me one word. What do you remember about Hooke's law? Right, it was essentially one of the first experiments that I had to do in physics, and pretty much it was a graph of force against extension. And you'd remember that what happened was that you'd have a spring, and essentially, as it is that, and you'd measure the initial length of the spring, and as it is that you actually attach weights. So you would have had a spring like this, right? And you'd have an initial length of the spring, right? Let us name that X. And as it is that you attach weights, you realize that as the force increases on the spring, what's going to happen to the extension, guys? What happens to the extension when you increase the force on this spring? Anyone? Right, so before it becomes deformed, becomes deformed, so eventually there will be a force that's applied, right? So the extension increases, so it's going to be directly proportional, right? So it's going to be directly proportional. So this Hooke's law can actually be applied to something like this, where it is that the spring is adapting to the force that's being applied. But there is a point that will be met, where it is that it is no longer going to be proportional, which is where it is that we know that force will no longer, as I said before, be proportional to extension. And what you realize is that even eventually the spring will not return to its initial length when it is that you've removed all of these weights. So does everybody understand that? Yes? No? I like interaction, guys. Come guys, get excited. Medicine is so fun. Excellent. Right, so here's a nice little image. I hope that you figured out that this is the heart. So what we have happening here is that, as highlighted here, this is the normal heart. And what normally happens is, so this little vessel that you see here is the superior vena cava, right? It's going to move through the right atrium, move through the right ventricle, go to your lungs, and then come back, and it's going to lead by this vessel right here. Who remembers the name of this vessel? Anybody remembers the name of this vessel? Right, it's the aorta, right? No. Does anybody know what the, right, so let's not get too complex, right? Now, there are times where it is that you see in this aortic vessel, in persons who may have hypertension, or for some strange reason, which can come with old age, you see this aortic valve that you see right here, it can become calcified, right? So you see, you can see the aortic valve right here. It can become calcified. And what ends up happening is that you realize that no, the same amount of force that this heart had to pump through the valve, because remember, hypertension would mean that we have an increased pressure in the peripheral system, or right now, where it is that we have what we call aortic stenosis, which is what I was describing with calcification of the valve, you'd realize that the heart now has to be pumping much stronger to actually maintain what we describe as cardiac output. So what ends up happening is that you realize that the heart on this side is much bigger than the heart on this side. Can everyone appreciate that? You mean kind of. But can everyone appreciate that there's a difference in size? Excellent. So that's exactly what it is that we meant by we can have some amount of adaptation. No, this person has what we call, anybody knows what's the name of, what's the medical name for an enlarged heart? Can someone tell me? Yes, they're very bright. Who wants to tell me? Who wants to surprise me and tell me what do we call an enlarged heart? Right, excellent, Mark. It's called cardiomegaly. I'm not the best scriber, guys. MedSkool is getting to me, but it's called cardiomegaly, and that's going to be a part of the adaptation that we have going on there. So let us speak, and it's pretty much the same thing. So here it is that we have a cross section of the heart, and you'd realize that ventricular walls are much thicker now. So let's describe some of the adaptive responses that we can have. So here's a very simple term that you guys need to be familiar with. It's called hypertrophy. Now, when it is that you hear hyper, what do you think of, apart from HyperAcademics? Right, so you think of gains. What else do you think of? Come on, guys, interact with me. That's the only way you're going to remember some of these things. Right, above, overactive, increase, right? So when it is that we have, and anybody wants to surprise me? What when we say trophy, what do we mean? So trophy really means growth, right? So it means growth. Sorry for my bad describing, I'm sorry. So when it is that we describe something as hypertrophic, right? Or yes, even that, right? When it is that we describe something as hypertrophic, we mean that it's increasing in size, in cell size. So note that I did not say that there's an increase in the number of cells. There's an increase in the size of each individual cell. So you may have a little minuscule cell right here, and it increases in size, right? So it's almost similar to this skinny Bill that we see right here. And he wants to start going to the gym and start working out. And you realize that each individual muscle fiber actually increases in size. And that is what we call hypertrophy. So you see the same heart that I showed you previously. That's what we would call ventricular hypertrophy. If it's specific to the left ventricle, we call it LVH, left ventricular hypertrophy. So it's pretty much the same concept, but this is just on a larger scale. Now, as Matlock rightly said, we have something we call hyperplasia, which is why it is that I made the distinction. So when it is that we think about hyperplasia, we're thinking about an increase or a gain in the number of cells. So instead of us having one cell here, we have multiple cells. We have an increase in the number of cells. Now, what causes an increase in the number of cells that we know? What process increases the number of cells? This is baby school knowledge. Right, excellent. Mitosis, right? So mitosis results in an increase in the number of cells. Now, you remember when it is that I said we have forms of stress in adaptation. We can have physiological stress, right? And we have pathological stress. Now, when it is that females enter into their uterine cycle, you'd realize that the endometrium, the lining, the endometrial lining of the uterus increases, not in size, it increases the number of cells, which of course grossly would look like an increase in size, right? Or an increase in the thickness. So that's physiological, because you remember, but that endometrial hyperplasia or this entire uterine cycle is mediated by hormones, right? So you have your estrogen involvement, you have your progesterone involvement, which increases the thickness of this endometrial lining, right? And maintains its thickness. So that's physiological, that's fine. Now, there are times where it is that we have pathological stresses that result in hyperplasia. Now, what it is that you see here, where it says normal cells may become cancer cells, is one example of pathological hyperplasia. So, as we said right here, the process that would result in hyperplasia, right, would be mitosis, right? So mitosis would result in hyperplasia. Now, there are times where it is that division can get a bit uncontrolled. And it's not neoplastic yet, meaning it's not cancerous yet, because who can tell me what cancer is in the basic sense of the term? What is a cancer or a neoplasm? In like 3 words. Right, excellent. Uncontrolled division of cells, right? So you can have hyperplasia, which is, quite normal. You increase the number of cells that you have happening, that you have existing, and then you can move into something we call dysplasia, which is not really something that we want per se. So dysplasia isn't a cancer just yet, and it doesn't have to become a cancer. But what we realize in dysplasia is that when it is that a cell is dividing, they're supposed to divide into mature cells, and they're supposed to look like cells. Now, in dysplasia, what's happening is that we realize that cells are dividing, but we realize that some cells aren't really looking like the mature cell that we should have there. So we have some immature cells coming out, and some of the cells just not looking right. Right? So that's what it is that we describe as dysplasia. And when you do FDT or pathology in general, you learn about some of the cellular features of dysplasia. Now, when it is that we take the scale, right, we tip away from dysplasia, that's where it is that it can move into neoplasia. Neo meaning new, and plasia meaning growth. So that's where it is that it's now uncontrolled. The cells are just dividing. It starts sucking up all the blood supply from the surrounding area. Some of the cells may want to jump now into the bloodstream and move to new organs. So that's pathological. That's not something that we want. Is everyone understanding so far? Is everything clear? Are you guys excited? Or no? These guys, they can tell me I'm boring, I want to take it personally. Maybe. So this is just another example. This is something we see very much in the Caribbean. What we call BPH. Who knows what BPH stands for? What is BPH? What is BPH, guys? Remember, we're not teaching basic medical sciences right now. We want to see how this applies the grander scheme of things. Come, guys, you have to Google faster than that, Right, excellent, guys. So benign prostatic hyperplasia. Right, so it's benign. It is problematic, but it's not malignant, which means, you know, it's kind of okay, not really, but it is, right? Prostatic, you know, it's describing the prostate. And hyperplasia means that there's an increase in the number of cells of the prostate. So this is something that actually happens as males age. And as you ascend through the years, you learn more about the different risk factors and all of that. But as you can understand, here it is that we have the bladder above, of the bladder right here. And you realize that this is where it is that the bladder is supposed to be moving through into the urethra so that it can actually, well, micturate or urinate. But what happens is that when it is that, and there's a portion of the urethra right here that we call the prostatic urethra. Now, what happens is that if the prostate is increasing in size, you'd realize that, do you think that urine would flow as smoothly as we'd want it to? Because look, it's increasing in size around the urethra right here. It's also pushing up on the bladder here and here. Do you think urine would be flowing as smoothly as we'd want it to? No, it wouldn't, right? And we know that we have some beautiful red bean organs up here. What are the beautiful red bean organs that we have above the bladder? The kidneys. So you can imagine that urine can flow this way, and guess what happens? It starts backing up into the system. And you know what can happen to this person? They can go right into kidney failure, right? If it goes on for too long, right? So you can see where it is that hyperplasia really can cause a bit of problems, right? So that's that. So this is another term you have to be familiar with. So we've spoken about hypertrophy. We've spoken about hyperplasia. We're now talking about atrophy, or some persons would say atrophy. I say atrophy. Some persons may say atrophy. So atrophy, and I don't really like reading a lot of words, so I tend to just say it how I know it in my head. So atrophy is just where it is that we have a decrease in cell size, as it says right here. So it's the opposite of hypertrophy, right? So as we'd expect, as it is that we see in the image over here, these are not some very thick legs, right? These legs are not doing very well at all, right? They need some meat on that bone. So as it says here, often as a result of a reduced supply of nutrients or growth factors or inactivity, or just lack of stimulation in general. So it gives you some causes there. So lack of physical activity for an extended period of time. So you see, people like me, I used to go to the gym every day in the pre-pandemic period. During my school breaks, after school, went to the gym several times per day. Used to get very fit. Then pandemic came, and then curfew came, and clinicals takes up hours, like 12 hours out of my day. So I can't go to the gym. So what happens to my muscles? They're not going to be hypertrophic, right? I mean, I might be getting a bit big because other things are becoming hypertrophic, I guess, not really. But I might be getting fatter, but that's not muscle, you get me? So what's happening to my muscles is that they're undergoing atrophy, right? Lack of physical activity. If you don't use it, you'll actually lose it. Aging, that's just normal physiological process of aging. Injuries such as broken bones, right? So right now, I'm on my orthopedic rotation, and we see a lot of broken bones for obvious reasons, right? And what you realize is that when you break a bone, you need to immobilize this bone. You can't have it moving too much, or else it's not going to heal. Yeah, my baby became hypertrophic, right? So it's not going to heal. So we may put on a plaster of Paris cast, and because the person isn't using the muscles, you realize that it becomes atrophic, right? And malnutrition, as we know, spinal cord or peripheral nerve injuries, you're not stimulating the muscles to move, and also the stroke. And everybody who knows me knows that I love neuroscience, right? So you have particular portions of your brain, right? Primarily, your primary motor cortex, that's involved, heavily involved in the central control of movement, right? Of motor activity. And if it is that you're having a stroke, you're not going to have much stimulation there either. Oh, that was my bad. Oops. So that brings us to a discussion of if it is that we've spoken about hypertrophy and atrophy. We need to talk about, aplasia. Now, aplasia, as it says here, is the failure of an organ or tissue to develop or function normally. And one of the best examples that I have here is something we call aplastic anemia. Aplastic anemia. Now, a very simple definition for aplastic anemia is where it is that we have, and you don't need to write this down, you'll touch on this eventually, is where it is that we have what we call a peripheral pancytopenia. A peripheral pancytopenia. So what is pancytopenia? Who understands what pancytopenia is? It's pancytopenia, guys. So pancytopenia. So, all right, guys, your bone marrow makes some cells, right? What are the cells that your bone marrow makes? So let's say they make 3 general groups of cells. What does your bone marrow make? Right, so yeah, blood cells, if we call it that, right? Let's say, yeah, so it's a low number of blood cells. But what are the 3 groups, general groups of quote unquote blood cells? Are the 3 things that your bone marrow is involved in making, right? So you have your RBCs, red blood cells, your erythrocytes, you have your WBCs, right? Your leukocytes, right? And you have your platelets, right? Your platelets. Excellent. So you have your platelets. So when it is that we say we have a peripheral pancytopenia, pan means all. It means that we have a decrease in platelets, decrease in WBCs, decrease in RBCs. But what would cause that peripheral pancytopenia? It is because we have a hypoplastic bone marrow. So it is that, and this, what it is that this histological picture is showing is what normal bone marrow would look like. So you realize that there's a whole lot of cells in there, a lot of blasts, erythroblasts, all of those things. And these little white blobs that you see here are actually fat cells. You know, your bone marrow stores fat, especially in its shaft. But let us compare it to this. What is happening in this picture over here? What you realize? What you realize in the B slide? Are there many cells there? Right, very few cells, and it's filled with these fat vacuoles, right? So this is just fat. All of this white stuff is just fat. So what you have is a peripheral pancytopenia because you have a hypoplastic bone marrow. If your bone marrow is just fat, you can't produce cells, right? So that's the easiest definition I can give you of aplastic anemia, right? Aplasia, and we don't really need to get into the definition of anemia per se, right? Radial aplasia, right, means that the person has a really small or underdeveloped radius, which is a bone in your forearm, right? And your thymic aplasia means that the person has underdeveloped thymus. Everybody enjoying themselves so far? Everybody understanding basic concepts applied to real clinical life? plastic. Well, I've never really looked it up, but I would just say number of cells. That's what I would know it as. So I know trophy as growth, and I just take pleasure as number of cells. Right? Excellent. And finally, we have hypoplasia, right? Hypoplasia is where it is that we have the underdevelopment or incomplete development of tissue or organ, right? So it's less drastic than aplasia, right? So you would remember from aplasia where it is that the bone marrow was pretty much empty, right? There wasn't really any cells, next to zero, right? So here it is that we have, so this is where it is that his mandible should have extended to, right? Articulating with the bone above and moving down so he can move his mouth up and down. Now, if we look at this individual, there's really nothing there. Understand? So that's mandibular hypoplasia. You can also have thymic hypoplasia. You have persons with testicular hypoplasia, which, you know, in a male, if you have testicular hypoplasia, you're going to have issues, right? Can't really produce that much testosterone, right? And you can have hypoplasia of tooth enamel. All right, so excellent, exciting stuff. Now, the final thing, and I hope you guys are following, the terms aren't really that difficult if you remember it, is metaplasia. Now, metaplasia is like, you know, a middle ground of all of these terms that we've described. Now, what is happening in metaplasia is that we have a change from one cell type to the next. So we might have a cell that looks like this, and it ends up looking like this. And it's not that it's increasing in size. It starts looking like something else, right? It just looks completely different. So the question then is, why would a cell have to change how it looks? What do you think is happening to that cell? Why would it have to change how it looks? You think it's some form of stress? That it has to adapt to something new? You guys think that's what's happening? Right, so it's adapting to stressors. Now, my favorite example is not the one that's here. My favorite example, and you're going to impress Prof. Lou when it is that you meet him, he teaches histology when he tells you about Barrett's esophagus. Barrett's esophagus, just like the last name, Barrett's esophagus. So this here is the esophagus. And this here is the stomach. And as we know, the stomach then moves into your small intestines, right? Specifically the duodenum. Now, how it is that food is supposed to move and everything should move is in an antigrade fashion. Everything should move forward, right? Eat your food, you chew it up, it becomes bolus, you swallow it. It moves through your esophagus, your pharynx, your esophagus moves into your stomach, it moves into your small intestines. Point really is that you're not supposed to have retrograde flow. You shouldn't have anything moving back. There's a specific condition, and there are many factors that account for it. Because remember, you're supposed to have a little sphincter right here, your lower esophageal sphincter, that should limit stuff moving back up into the esophagus. But sometimes this sphincter doesn't really work very well, right? And there are many factors, there are many things that can relax that sphincter, you know. For those of you who like to drink alcohol, smoke, particular drugs can actually relax that sphincter. And what you have happening is that the acidic stomach content starts moving back up into the esophagus. And who wants to tell me the name of it? It's called GERD. What does this stand for? Right, excellent. Gastroesophageal reflux disease. You see the cells that line the esophagus, they're not made to take this acid. They're really not made to take this acid. So they have nicely to what we call, and you'll be exposed to the term, squamous epithelium that lines it. But now it has to change into intestinal cells. It undergoes what we call intestinal metaplasia to accommodate this acid going back up there. Of course, this is more of a chronic process, right? And we call that at that point the Barrett's esophagus. And this metaplasia is not particularly a good thing because eventually it can become dysplasia, as it says right here, and then it can develop an esophageal cancer, specifically an esophageal adenocarcinoma. Everybody understood that? Right, guys. So who wants to very quickly look at these 2 feet? What is the difference between these 2 feet? Right, so one is swollen, the other one is not. Anything else that you can see on observation? Right, so swollen is one thing, but anything else you can see? Look at the color of the feet. Right, one looks red. Right, so that brings us into a discussion of very quickly inflammation. Not a long discussion at all, maybe about 5 minutes. So here it is that we have a little nerd boy, right? Who wants to give him a name? Let's call him Devon. Oh right, so this is Devon.
He was gonna do this.
Devon Brewster. Right, so this is Devon Brewster. Right? Now, Devon really likes this girl, right? This girl. Everybody knows who this is, right? Shensia. Now, Shensia isn't really paying Devon any mind until one day he shows her a lot of money. Devon shows her a lot of money. And all of a sudden, Shensia wants to know Devon. But the sad story is, Shensia's father looks something like this. So she invites Devon over, you know. But Shensia's father looks something like this. So he knows that he can't go through the front door. Right? You know, like one of those old movies where you have to jump the back fence and throw stones at the window, and she throws down some ladder and you have to climb up. Yeah, definitely. That's what's happening. So here's Devon, as he has ventured to the abode of Shensia and her father. And he's about to jump the fence. But being as unfortunate as Devon could be, he's stung by some wasps. And now, Devon presents to you as a junior doctor with his face as swollen as this. Can you imagine? Now, there are what we call the cardinal signs of inflammation, right? There are 5 cardinal signs of inflammation. So remember the foot that I showed you at first? You remember the face that I just showed you? There are 5 cardinal signs associated with inflammation. And they're placed in this language here. I believe it's Latin, if I'm not mistaken. I actually don't remember. It's one of those older languages, right? So who wants to tell me what rubor stands for? What does rubor stand for? Red. Excellent. So you look at it, just like the foot, it looks red. What does tumor stand for? Well, not thick, but swelling, right? Or edema, right? So swelling. Swelling. What does dolor stand for? Right, pain. And what does calor stand for? Right, so it's hot. And I'm not even going to make an attempt to pronounce the one down here. But what do you think this stands for? Right, excellent. Loss of function. Right, so loss of function. Right, so these are the cardinal signs of inflammation. There are 5 of them. And with inflammation, you will see these things. So similar to the face, similar to the foot, you see it's red, it's swollen. You realize that it's painful. If you feel it because of the vasodilation of the vessels, it feels very hot, and the person doesn't really want to use it, right? Maybe because it's painful, or just maybe because of how swollen it is, or how it's affected, you lose function. Excellent, guys. So we're going to take a little break-ish.
I just want the record to show without any reasonable or unreasonable doubt that as soon as Wednesday arrives, I'm going to sue Xavier for defamation. But I think that it's just been so exciting thus far with this academic session. I really like the fact that you all are so engaged, and Xavier has managed to keep your attention up until this point. There's just one more aspect of this academic session, and if my memory serves me right, it's probably just about 2 slides, right, Xavier? Just about 2 slides.
Just 2 slides.
So actually, we'll be out here in no time. Okay, wow. So it seems as if, Xavier, that you have a friend here, Matlock, who is claiming that I was the one who aggravated you first by calling you big head. I don't know about that, so I don't think that's gonna hold up in court. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so without further ado, we're gonna just transition quickly into that last aspect, just 2 slides, and then we wrap up for today and get set for tomorrow. That sounds like a plan, right? Wonderful. Oh, okay. I'm not too. I think they should be able to hear you now. Could you
Can you
just?
guys hear me now?
Uh,
Right, excellent. So quickly, what it is that I had said before was that there are two arms of pharmacology that is being introduced to, right? One of them is pharmacodynamics, which is what we're discussing today in the interest of time. And the other one, as you saw me right, was pharmacokinetics. Now, a simple way to not mix up the two is to remember the D in pharmacodynamics. So pharmacodynamics describes how the drug affects the body, right? So the drug enters the body, it's going to bind to something, it's going to do something to the body, which is why we take the drug, versus pharmacokinetics, which is how the body affects the drug itself. So you take the drug by a particular route, you have different routes, intravenous, intramuscular, subcutaneous, intrathecal. There are different ways you can take the drug, right? It has to be, excellent, Mark. It has to be absorbed. It has to be used. It has to be metabolized. It has to be excreted, right? Now, we're not going to discuss the kinetics. We're going to discuss how the drug affects the body. So that brings us to this slide, which just covers a few little important terms related to pharmacodynamics. So when a drug enters your body, it will bind to something. One of the most common things it will bind to is a receptor. It can bind to many things, DNA, ion channels. It can bind to many things, right? But the key thing is that it can bind to a receptor, something that wants it to bind to it. So what we have is what we call drug receptor binding. Now, when a drug binds to a receptor, it carries out what we describe as mechanism of action, which is what we take the drug for. And I'm going to just tell you probably about two drugs as we go along, and how exactly it is that it actually works. Now, there are different ways in which a drug can actually operate. Now, the first one that you see here is that some drugs are agonists. Now, when you think about agonists, what do you think about?
It's 4 o'clock.
Come guys, just 5 more minutes with me, and you guys can go and eat your Sunday dinner. Right, so it facilitates the action, so it promotes a physiological response, right? So if it is that this cell was made to pump out good grades, right? It's supposed to pump out a lot of A pluses, and the drug that we're giving it is studying, right? Then you'd realize that the more we study is the more we'll actually get A pluses, right? So this is an agonist. Now, the way in which agonists can be defined or classified actually is whether it's a full agonist or a partial agonist. Now, a full agonist means that when it is that the drug binds to the receptor, it gives a maximal response. So it goes up to the maximum that that cell can actually perform, right? If I'm keeping it very simple. A partial agonist still stimulates the cell. It still stimulates whatever tissue it wants to stimulate, or it's made to stimulate. But it doesn't bring it up to that maximum response. But it's still good enough to take it, right? So that maximum response that we're talking about, or a measure of it, is actually efficacy that we see right here. Now, potency is a really simple concept. And it really means, let's say we have two drugs, right? Now, if it is that I give 2 drops, right? 2 drops, 2 little eye drops of that drug, and it gives me a maximal response, right? Maximal efficacy. And then I take another drug that works in the same way, and I have to pour out an entire jug before it actually gives me that same response. You'd realize that one drug is more potent than the next, right? Because one drug requires a much lower concentration of it to be used, right? Before it can achieve the maximal response that we want. So does everybody understand the concept of potency? Right, excellent. So here's a little graph that we'll be introduced to, and it will definitely come on your exams for HDT. I love to ask it because medical students, for some strange reason, don't like interpreting graphs. So we have 3 drugs here: drug A, drug B, drug C. What you can realize is that as it is that the concentration or the amount of the drug is being used, you realize that there is an increase in the physiological response. And it so happens that the physiological response we have here is an increase in the heart rate. Now, what you realize is that A requires much less of it to being used to achieve the maximal. So let's say that this is a maximal response. You realize that this requires much less of it to be used compared to B to achieve the maximal response. So which drug between A and B is more potent? Right, Mark. You're seeing a comment. But which one of these drugs between A and B would be more potent? Right, A. Now let us look at C. So C works in the same way as these 2 drugs, but it doesn't really achieve the maximum that we want it to. So what would you call C? What would C be described as out of all the terms right here? Right, so C would be a partial agonist. So you see how simple this graph is once it is that you understand these concepts. And now for the final slide is the flip side. So you have some drugs called, or that can be grouped as antagonists. So what do you think antagonists do? Right, and see what the less potent. We'll see that. Right, so they would inhibit that physiological response, right? So one drug we can actually think of that many of you guys take would be ibuprofen, right? And what ibuprofen does is that it inhibits an enzyme that we call cyclooxygenase, right? There are forms of the enzyme, but you don't really need to know much about that. But it inhibits this enzyme right here. Now, this enzyme, I'm sorry for the noise behind me. This enzyme produces prostaglandins, and prostaglandins are important for the mediation of pain. So you can imagine when it is that you take this drug called ibuprofen, right? Or you can think about even acetaminophen. Well, no, acetaminophen, let's not consider that. When you ibuprofen, diclofenac, you have different forms of the drug. It inhibits COX. And COX is responsible for the production of prostaglandins, so you can feel what? Pain. So you can imagine when it is that you take ibuprofen and it knocks off this enzyme, you're not going to feel pain. And that's exactly how it is that these NSAIDs, non-steroidal analgesics would actually work, anti-inflammatory drugs, right? So that's an example of antagonist. Now, some antagonists may be reversible, which just means that it can bind to the receptor and come back off, right? Or it may be irreversible, which means that when it binds to the receptor, it's not coming off. And we describe it as being competitive because the same receptor that an agonist would bind to would be the same receptor that the antagonist would bind to. So the antagonist can come here and bind to this receptor either reversibly, right? It can leave, or irreversibly, where it stays there. You also have non-competitive antagonists, which just means that you may have a receptor here on the cell, but it binds to another site on the cell and is still able, which means that an agonist can still come and land right here, but in binding at this site, which is like a secondary site, it's still able to inhibit the physiological process. So that's it from me.
Thank you so much. Oh my God, my glasses ended up on top of my head. Thank you so much, Xavier, for this riveting presentation. I really appreciated and still do appreciate the extent to which our students have been engaged all throughout the process. You see, guys, medical school isn't that difficult. Half of us can be doctors tomorrow. I'm just joking. This was just a tip of the iceberg. Some basic concepts. When you start, when you actually start your classes, you're gonna realize that they're gonna go through these very same concepts. Gonna go into a little more detail. But here's what. You, having been privy to that through the efforts of the man by the name of Xavier Brown, whose name I'm just about to send to my lawyer. It means that you're gonna have a little advantage because you already have some of the information, and that's just simply fantastic. So to you, Xavier, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. And Angelique is saying, vote Xavier for lecturer. Man, it would be interesting if that was a process that our lecturers was chosen by an electoral process. But that brings us to the end of day 2 of MedSkool KickOff. I think we've had a fantastic day 1 and even much fantasticer day 2, and we're gearing up for day 3 tomorrow. So let me just let you know what to expect tomorrow. So tomorrow, Monday, August 30th, 2021, from 4 p.m. Jamaica time, 5 p.m. Eastern Caribbean time, we will meet again to have a discussion on how do I know that medicine or dentistry is right for me? Guys, I personally wish, and words cannot express the extent to which I wish, when I was at your level, that someone had that conversation with us, because I have seen too many medical and dental students, they drop out along the way because it's usually one of two things. Either one, they knew they didn't really want to do it in the first place, but they succumb to social pressures, family, friend pressure that they have to become a doctor, or they actually realize after first or second semester or third semester that it's not really for them, and then they struggle with the battle of whether they should drop out or not. But all of that we will be examining tomorrow in great detail. You saw how we had a wonderful discussion today on social life, and we're going to duplicate that with 3 times the amount of excitement on this very important topic. And then after we do that, we're going to have our final of our academic sessions, again, basic, simple stuff on the locomotor system, which is the locomotor system, which is the refers to the, oh my God, I'm having a senior moment. We're referring to the anatomy. Yes, thank you very much. Anatomy. So that basically is it. Someone is asking and reminding me about the winner of the MSKO, MedSkool KickOff challenge. We had 2 challenges so far. We had one for day 1, which ought to have been announced yesterday, and one for today. I want to first of all apologize for not announcing the winner yesterday, and I want to go to announce right now the winner of the first challenge, MSKO Challenge 1, and that winner, the name of that winner, drum roll please. The name of the winner is, let me just make sure I get it correct, Chad Ford. So congratulations to Chad Ford. Chad Ford, I'm going to ask you if you could just send me a message. You can either message us on Instagram at HyperAcademics, or send us a message on WhatsApp, so that we can work out how you claim your prize. And the prize for the MSKO Challenge 1 is an Amazon gift card, and so we'll have that Amazon gift card delivered to you once you produce your email information. So congratulations to you. I want to further apologize for not being able to announce the winner of the second challenge today as promised, but I'm going to promise you that the winner is going to be announced tomorrow, and that is because we're doing this fair. We're not doing any favoritism. It's purely by chance, and the person who I wanted to assist me to ensure that it's objective was not available last evening. So we're going to do that later today and announce the winner of the second challenge tomorrow. Okay, so thank you so much everybody for joining us, and I really hope that you have a wonderful rest of this beautiful Sunday afternoon, and you are geared up. I know that, remember, your faculty orientations, well, I know for sure at the Mona campus is supposed to start tomorrow, and I know later in the week other campuses are going to start. So remember, faculty orientation is one of the most important things you need to go to as a freshman. So ensure that you go to those. I know that none of the events go beyond, I think, about 1 o'clock or so forth. You have a few hours to eat, to relax, to chill, and then to come right back here on the HyperAcademics YouTube channel for the third day of MedSkool KickOff. So without further ado, just want to thank everybody who participated. Thank everybody for coming. And as we keep saying, you can always send us a message on Instagram or in the WhatsApp groups to ask us any questions, and let your friends know who are not here what they missed out, and tell them that it's okay, because the recordings are all there on our YouTube channel and they can all watch after. So with that said, have yourself a wonderful evening, and thank you so much for coming.